The challenge. The arena was massive, carved from an ancient asteroid and reinforced with energy shields. It was here, in the heart of the galactic combat tournament, that the greatest warriors of the universe fought for honor, power, and glory. The event was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, and the audience was eager to witness another brutal fight. Among the crowd, thousands of alien species had gathered. Some were watching from the stands, while others observed through holograms. The air was filled with the sounds of roaring creatures, battle drums, and the hum of energy weapons being checked one last time before the match began. At the center of the arena stood General Tyrek, a towering figure covered in black armor that shimmered under the artificial lights. He was a Drakfair, one of the most feared warrior species in the universe. His kind had conquered hundreds of worlds, their combat skills unmatched. Tyrek himself was a legend, undefeated, ruthless, and known for crushing his opponents within seconds. He stood with his arms crossed, his four crimson eyes scanning the arena, waiting for his opponent. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. "Warriors of the galaxy, prepare yourselves for a battle that will be remembered for ages. Presenting the champion of the Drakfair Empire, General Tyrek." The crowd roared in approval. Tyrek raised his massive clawed hand, acknowledging his fans. He had won countless battles, and tonight would be no different. His opponent was nothing more than an inconvenience, a warm-up for the real fights ahead. The announcer continued. "And now from the distant world of Earth, Captain Daniel Graves." Silence. For a moment, the entire arena went quiet. Then murmurs spread through the crowd. A human. Many aliens had never even seen a human before, and those who had considered them weak, insignificant creatures. They were smaller, softer, and lacked the natural weapons or defenses that most warrior species possessed. Humans were not known for their physical strength, nor their advanced combat technology. Why would a human enter the galactic combat tournament? The crowd's whispers turned into laughter. Many spectators were already placing bets, not on who would win, but on how long the human would last before being crushed. From the opposite end of the arena, Captain Daniel Graves stepped forward. He was an average-looking human, lean, dressed in a simple combat uniform, no heavy armor, no energy weapons. His brown eyes were calm, focused. He didn't carry the arrogance of a warrior who expected victory, nor the fear of a man walking to his death. He simply observed. Tyrek narrowed his eyes, studying his opponent. There was something unsettling about the way the human moved. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't posturing like most fighters. He simply walked to his side of the arena and stood there. Tyrek smirked. This would be over in seconds. The announcer raised his hand. "Begin." Tyrek didn't waste time. He lunged forward, moving faster than the human eye could track. His massive claws aimed directly at the human's throat. The fight should have ended right then and there. But it didn't. Graves moved. Not in panic, not in desperation. With precision. He leaned back just an inch, just enough for Tyrek's claws to miss by a hair's width. The attack that should have ended the fight met empty air. Tyrek's mind barely had time to process what had happened before the human took a single step to the side, casually avoiding the follow-up strike. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tyrek blinked. He was fast, faster than almost any warrior alive. No one had ever dodged his first attack so easily. He growled, adjusting his stance. Maybe the human got lucky. Tyrek attacked again, this time using his full speed. His claws slashed through the air, his movements sharp and precise. Again, Graves dodged. Not wildly, not recklessly. He moved only as much as needed, as if he already knew where Tyrek would strike before the attack even happened. Now, the laughter in the crowd had stopped. Tyrek clenched his fists. He wasn't just fighting a weak human. He was fighting something else entirely, something unnatural. And for the first time in his long career, Tyrek felt doubt. Tyrek took a step back, his crimson eyes narrowing as he analyzed the human before him. His opponent had yet to throw a single punch, yet something about him felt wrong. Not weak, not fragile, but unpredictable. It was as if the human wasn't just reacting to his attacks but anticipating them. The crowd, once laughing, had gone eerily silent. The other warriors watching from the stands leaned forward. Their interest piqued. Even the announcer hesitated before speaking again. Sirek let out a low growl. Enough of this. No more testing, no more playing. With a roar that shook the arena, he activated his battle mode. His black armor shifted, plates locking into place as energy surged through his body. His muscles expanded, veins glowing with the power of his enhanced physiology. This was the full might of a Drakvar warlord. The air grew heavy with pressure, and many weaker species in the crowd instinctively leaned away from the sheer force radiating off of him. Human, Sirek said, his voice a deep rumble. You die now. He moved at full speed, a blur of muscle and claws. His attacks came in rapid succession, each strike powerful enough to shatter steel. But the human still dodged. Not just dodged, evaded, effortlessly. Graves wasn't faster than Sirek. No, that wasn't it. His movements weren't based on speed. They were based on knowledge. It was as if he had seen this fight before. Sirek attacked low. Graves stepped back. Sirek feinted left. Graves didn't fall for it. Sirek launched a devastating overhead slash. Graves simply leaned to the side, letting it pass harmlessly. A bead of sweat formed on Sirek's forehead. The Drakvar never sweat. Graves finally spoke. You're strong, he said, voice calm, but you're fighting the wrong war. Sirek snarled and lunged forward. This time, he wouldn't miss. But Graves didn't dodge. He moved in. In a blur, he sidestepped the attack, closing the distance between them. Before Sirek could react, the human's open palm struck his chest. It was a soft impact, no harder than a tap. Sirek's mind barely had time to process it before he felt it. His legs locked up. His arms wouldn't move. His entire body froze in place. The crowd gasped. Sirek tried to break free, but his body refused to obey. What kind of attack was this? No force, no impact, yet his nervous system was shutting down. His breathing quickened. He could feel his own heart pounding too fast, too unstable. He was losing control. Graves simply took a step back, watching him with calm, knowing eyes. Your people rely on strength, the human said quietly. But strength alone doesn't win wars. Sirek collapsed to his knees. His vision blurred. His powerful body, one that had never once failed him, was shutting down. He wanted to scream, but his voice wouldn't come out. For the first time in his life, Sirek was powerless. The silence in the arena was suffocating. The once roaring crowd of warriors, nobles, and warlords now sat frozen, their expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. Sirek, the undefeated Drakvar warlord, was on his knees, completely helpless. Graves stood before him, his stance relaxed, his breathing steady. He wasn't smiling, wasn't taunting, he was simply watching. The Drakvar were a warrior race. Their entire civilization was built upon the belief that the strongest ruled. Strength was the only language they understood, and Sirek had embodied that belief. He had conquered planets, crushed enemies, and stood unbeaten in the galactic arenas. And yet, this human had defeated him without throwing a single punch. Sirek's mind raced. What had happened? There was no force behind that strike. No pain. No impact. Yet his body had betrayed him. His limbs refused to obey. His strength drained away in an instant. A warrior in the stands finally found his voice. What did you do to him? Graves turned slightly, his gaze shifting to the one who spoke. His expression didn't change. I shut him down. His voice was calm, almost indifferent. Pressure point disruption. Your bodies rely on muscle, but your nervous system is the true battlefield. Sirek gritted his teeth. He forced his arms to move, but they wouldn't. His legs trembled, but he couldn't stand. He had always thought of combat as strength versus strength. This human had just proven him wrong. Graves took a slow step forward. The watching warriors flinched. He knelt down, meeting Sirek's furious, confused gaze. Your kind thinks brute force is the ultimate power. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent arena. But real power is understanding. Sirek's breathing was ragged. His body was starting to recover, but the humiliation burned. He had been defeated in front of his people by a species they considered weak. How? Sirek growled. His voice was strained. Humans are supposed to be weaker than us. Graves exhaled softly. That's what the galaxy believes. And that's why you keep losing to us. Sirek's eyes widened. A murmur spread through the crowd. Losing. The Drakvar weren't losing. They had conquered dozens of species, waged war across multiple systems. Their empire was expanding. Graves could see the doubt in their eyes. He let them think. Then he spoke again. Tell me, he said, looking at the crowd now. How many wars have you won? A Drakvar general in the stand snarled. More than you can count, human. Graves nodded, unfazed. And how many wars have you ended? The warriors stilled. Sirek clenched his jaw. Graves stood up. His voice was still quiet, but now there was an edge to it. You conquer. You fight. You boast about your strength, but every time humanity fights, we don't just win. We end the war. He took a slow step forward, and the warriors flinched again. When we fight, we don't seek victory. We don't seek glory. He stopped, looking down at Sirek. We finish wars. The words hit harder than any punch. Sirek finally forced himself to stand, but the confidence in his stance was gone. For the first time, he understood why the galaxy feared humans. The arena still buzzed with a stunned silence. Sirek had managed to stand, but the weight of what had happened still pressed down on him like an unmovable force. Defeated, not by overwhelming strength, not by superior weapons, but by something he had never considered: understanding. He clenched his fists. His body was recovering, but his pride, his very beliefs, lay shattered at his feet. Graves, the human, stood calm as ever, his stance relaxed, his expression unreadable. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't mocking. And somehow, that made it worse. The Drakvar warriors in the stands had begun whispering among themselves. Their sharp voices were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Sirek was unbeatable. They say humans are weak. But this one, he didn't even hit him. Graves let them speak. He had seen this reaction before. It always happened when aliens encountered the truth about human warfare. They thought they understood battle. They thought they understood what made a species strong. But they had no idea. Sirek glared at the human, forcing himself to breathe steadily. His body still tingled, recovering from the pressure point attack. His mind, however, refused to accept what had just happened. You cheated, Sirek growled. His voice was raw, desperate. You used trickery. This was not honorable combat. Graves tilted his head slightly. Honor, he repeated, as if testing the word. A slow, amused exhale left his lips. He took a step closer. Let me tell you something about human warfare, Sirek. His voice was still calm, but now there was weight behind it. We don't fight for honor. We don't fight for pride. We fight to win. Sirek bared his teeth. That is the mindset of a coward. Graves smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Is that what you think? He took another step forward, closing the space between them. The other Drakvar warriors shifted uneasily. Then tell me, warlord, Graves continued, his voice quieter now, more dangerous. Who writes your history? Derek frowned. What? Graves gestured to the towering banners hanging in the arena, each one depicting great battles, victories, conquests. Your history is written by those who won, isn't it? Derek didn't answer. Graves nodded slightly. Humans have a saying. History is written by the victors. The warriors in the stands fell silent again. Derek clenched his fists. And what does that prove? Graves held his gaze. It means we don't care how we win. We only care that we do. The words sent a chill through the arena. Derek inhaled sharply, his mind racing. The Drakvar had always believed that battle was a test of strength, that wars were won through force, bravery, and honor. But the human was telling them something else. Something terrifying. That strength didn't matter. That honor was meaningless. That the only thing that mattered was the outcome. Derek had fought countless battles. He had crushed weaker species, commanded armies, conquered planets. But this was different. Graves watched him, his expression unreadable. You think humans are weak, he said, his tone casual. That's fine. Keep believing that. Derek's glare hardened. Graves took one last step forward, now only inches away. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for Derek's ears. But when your wars start turning to ashes, when your mighty armies are silenced, when your great warlords vanish into the dark. He leaned in slightly. Just remember, we don't fight for honor. We fight to end you. Derek felt those words. He felt them settle deep in his bones. And for the first time in his life, the great warlord of the Drakvar knew fear. The weight of Graves' words lingered in the arena, heavy like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. Derek stood frozen, his mind battling against itself. His entire life had been built on the belief that strength ruled the galaxy, that warriors who fought with power and honor were the ones destined to lead. But now, a single human had shattered that belief. He looked at Graves, trying to find weakness, hesitation, anything that would prove his worldview was still correct. But there was nothing, just the same calm, unshaken expression. The Drakvar warriors in the stands had stopped whispering. They too had felt what Derek had felt. It wasn't just the technique that defeated him. It wasn't just the strange human combat method. It was the mindset. Derek clenched his fists. His body still ached from the pressure point attack, but it was his pride that had taken the real damage. He refused to accept this. He refused to believe that these so-called weaker creatures had mastered war in a way his species never had. Derek growled. You speak as if humans are unbeatable. Graves gave a slow shrug. We're not. That response caught Derek off guard. Graves took a step back, casually adjusting his uniform. Humans can be killed. Our fleets can be destroyed. Our armies can be defeated. Derek narrowed his eyes. Then what makes you so dangerous? Graves looked at him. And then, with a smirk that sent a chill through every warrior in the arena, he said, because we learn. Derek inhaled sharply. Every war, every battle, every loss. Graves' voice was steady, controlled. We adapt. We study our enemies. We find weaknesses. His eyes locked onto Derek's. And the moment we understand you, his voice dropped lower, a whisper filled with something ancient, something terrifying. You've already lost. Derek took a step back. He didn't even realize he had done it. The Drakvar warlords in the stands noticed, and that was when Derek felt it. A shift in the air. His warriors, his own people, were looking at him differently. They had doubted humans. Now, they doubted him. Graves must have noticed, too. He didn't press further. He didn't have to. The seed had been planted. He simply turned and began to walk away. Derek gritted his teeth. He had to say something. He had to win back control. You think you are the first species to claim this? Derek called after him. Others have threatened us before. Graves stopped. Without turning, he responded, "And where are they now?" Zyrek's breath caught in his throat. Graves didn't wait for a reply. He simply kept walking, disappearing into the halls of the arena, leaving behind a room full of silent, shaken warriors. And for the first time in Drakvar history, the thought entered their minds. What if humans were right? The silence in the arena stretched on, thick and suffocating. No one dared to speak, not even Zyrek. The words Graves had left behind echoed in their minds, drilling into their very beliefs. Warriors did not fear battle. They did not fear pain. They feared defeat. And for the first time, they had glimpsed something they could not overcome. Zyrek clenched his fists so tightly his claws dug into his own flesh. His mind raced, trying to push away the growing dread. No, this was impossible. Humans were nothing. They had no claws, no natural armor, no enhanced strength. They were weak. And yet, the way Graves had spoken, the way he had fought, the certainty in his voice. Zyrek had seen many warriors boast. He had seen even the greatest of them fall. But this was different. Graves had not spoken with arrogance. He had not tried to intimidate. He had simply stated a fact. Humans learn. The moment they understand you, you've already lost. Zyrek turned sharply, expecting to see his fellow warriors shaking off the moment, regaining their confidence. But they weren't. Instead, he saw something far worse. Doubt. Doubt in their eyes. Doubt in their stance. Doubt in him. A warlord in the stands finally spoke, his voice hesitant. Could it be true? Could the humans really be? He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Another warrior, a veteran who had fought a dozen wars, exhaled slowly. I have seen their battles. I have seen their fleets rise from ruin. They fight like no other species. Zyrek snarled. Enough. You let the words of a single human shake you. But even as he spoke, he felt the uncertainty creeping into his own voice. Because deep down, Zyrek knew the truth. Graves had not come here to win a fight. He had come here to prove a point. And he had succeeded. The thought made Zyrek sick. His people, the mighty Drakvar, had prided themselves on being the greatest warriors in the galaxy. And yet, here they were, shaken by a human who had not even drawn blood. He would not accept this. He could not. His pride burned, demanding vengeance. But for the first time in his life, his warrior instincts told him something different. Attacking would be useless, because humans learn. And that meant they would always be one step ahead. The Drakvar warriors left the arena in silence. No cheers, no celebrations, no boasts of future victories. Just quiet, uneasy thoughts weighing heavy in their minds. Zyrek walked through the grand halls of the War Academy, his claws clicking against the polished stone floor. He ignored the murmurs of the younger warriors. He could feel their eyes on him, questioning, doubting. It infuriated him. He had spent his entire life training for war, believing that strength alone was the key to victory. His people had conquered countless worlds, crushed civilizations that dared to resist. They had never questioned their way of life. But now, because of a single human, everything had changed. The words still echoed in his mind. The moment we understand you, you've already lost. Zyrek growled under his breath. He needed answers. He needed to understand. He stormed toward the war archives, where the Drakvar kept records of every species they had encountered. When he arrived, the ancient scribes looked up, startled. Warriors rarely visited this place. I want every recorded battle against the humans, Zyrek ordered. Every conflict, every war. Now, the scribes hesitated for a moment before obeying. Scrolls, digital tablets, and ancient war reports were placed before him. Zyrek sat down and began to read. The more he read, the more his blood turned cold. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They did not have the most powerful fleets. And yet, they always won. Not because of brute force, not because of superior technology, because they adapted. Every time they lost, they came back stronger. Every enemy that underestimated them fell. Wars that should have ended in their extinction only made them more dangerous. One report stood out, a battle against a reptilian empire known as the HFY Dominion. The HFY had nearly wiped out a human colony, thinking it would be an easy victory. 3 years later, humanity returned. They had learned the HFY's strategies. They predicted their movements. They countered every attack before it even happened. The HFY Dominion no longer existed. Xeric's claws trembled as he set the report down. This was not normal. No species should be able to evolve like this. Wars changed civilizations over centuries, not within years. He looked at more records. Each war told the same story. Humanity lost. Humanity learned. Humanity won. And now, they had left galactic politics. Xeric finally understood. They had never needed the Galactic Senate. The Senate was a place of debates, treaties, and compromises. It was built to keep powerful species in check. But humans were beyond that. They didn't need to sit among the stars, arguing over laws and alliances. They were watching. They were waiting. And the moment the galaxy became a threat to them, they would return. And by then, it would already be too late.